Thank you, Donald. Although I'm not sure that everybody in the United Nations today, particularly those who are part of his secretariat and highly paid by them, will be saying, thank you, Donald. Because what Donald Trump did today was he spoke at the United Nations and he said some things that really, I think, made them examine their shoes, look down at the floor, swallow hard. He criticised the fact that the United Nations at times had been a very much overpaid talking shop. And they didn't like that one little bit. But what he did do, and let me be absolutely straightforward here, I am a Donald Trump friend and supporter. Now, that makes me a pretty unusual beast in this country because no single national newspaper had a good word to say about him. Everybody in the cabinet, every single one of them, condemned him at some point during his campaign. I supported Trump in his campaign because I thought that he had good instincts. Yeah, sure, at times he may be a slightly, out there, and his critics will say crude exponent of the English language, but I thought his big instincts were the right ones. And today, at the UN, I thought he showed them. I mean, for example, on North Korea, where over the course of the last few years, everybody has tried to hide away, to pretend it's simply not happening. What Trump is trying to do is to rally international support and to stop Mad Kim from getting a nuclear weapon. Let's hear Trump.
The United States has great strength and patience. But if it is forced to defend itself or its allies, we will have no choice but to totally destroy North Korea.
OK, well, there's nothing new in that. He said it before. He went a bit further, and this maybe is the quote that'll get the main headlines, although not, in fact, in many ways, the main substance of the speech. But listen to this, because this will be on your front pages tomorrow.
The United States and our allies are working together throughout the Middle East to crush the loser terrorists and stop the reemergence of safe havens they use to launch attacks on all of our people.
So he's going to attack loser terrorists. He's called Kim Jong-un. He said he was Rocket Man, headed on a suicide mission. And they're all the things that'll make the headlines. But what was really interesting, I thought, about Trump's speech today was his absolute defence of the concept of national sovereignty. I quote, "Strong sovereign nations let diverse countries with different values, different cultures, different dreams, not just coexist, but work side by side on the basis of mutual respect." It was a powerful speech in defence of the concept of nation state. I'm sure, as Mr. Juncker heard this in Brussels, he was reaching for the bottle, unable to really comprehend what Trump had said. He attacked socialism in a way I've never heard a Western leader do, perhaps not since Thatcher, by making the point that the reason socialism had failed is not because it was poorly implemented, but because, in fact, it had been correctly implemented. He stood up and said that mass migration had been bad for countries all over the world. And as you've just heard, he said the world must rally against North Korea, and if nobody else would do it, America alone would do it. And I wonder, given the absolutely negative diet that you've all heard about Donald Trump over the course of the last year and more, whether what you've heard today has made you change your opinion on the US president. If you think, actually, Trump is rather better than I'd feared he would be, he stands up for the right things, call me on 0345 6060 973. If you still think, no, he's absolutely awful, misogynistic, narrow-minded, cutting America off from the rest of the world, and my view has not changed, then text me on 84850, and you can tweet me on @LBC, not forgetting the hashtag Farage on LBC. Did Donald Trump today make an impression? Did Donald Trump today actually make you think, wow, here is somebody at the United Nations having the courage to stand up and to say we've got to tackle tough issues. We've got to worry about Iran and what they stand for. We've got to stop Mad Kim in North Korea getting a nuclear warhead on an intercontinental ballistic missile. And we've got to actually recognise that mass migration has not been good for either the countries that people come from or those that they go to as well. Is Trump a better president? Is Trump a better global leader than you thought he would be? Now, of course, my view on this is tinged by the fact that I took part in his campaign last year. But I'll tell you, I really thought today what we saw, and whether you agree with everything he said or not, and whether you think calling the leader of North Korea Rocket Man, who was on a suicide mission to self-destruct, whether you agree with that or not, what I thought he did actually very bravely today was to give global leadership of the kind we haven't seen before. And it's my contention, and I said it on Fox News earlier on this afternoon, it is my contention that the British public actually seeing what Trump stands for, my contention is his approval ratings will go up. Tell me I'm right, tell me I'm wrong on 03456060973. And Colin in Southampton, what do you think about Trump today? Were you impressed or not?
Yes, good evening.
Good
Nigel.
evening.
Yes, yes, I was impressed in as much as that I think it was a cute move by him, because, as I said to your researcher, generally American presidents are judged on their foreign policy rather than their home policy. And I think Obama sadly lacked it, and I think he's showing a bit of backbone.
Well, Obama didn't really have a foreign policy, did he? It was very difficult to decipher what it was. And Obama would have stood up at the UN and said, isn't it all lovely? Aren't we all wonderful? Let's have a great day. No, Colin, I'm with you. I think he did show some backbone. And wasn't it funny to see the President of the USA in New York, there on 2nd Avenue, actually criticising how much taxpayers' money was wasted in bureaucracy at the UN?
Yeah. I mean, I can't fault the guy. I think that, you know, I mean, he's had the finger pointed at him, and I did actually sense this may happen, that a situation would arise, and so it has. And I think that this could be his turnaround. So,
Colin, has Trump's status gone up, in your opinion, after today?
Yes, most definitely.
Splendid. Thank you very much indeed. Michael in Chichester. So, we had Obama before, we've got Trump now, two very different people. Trump being portrayed in the most negative light possible in the UK press. Has your view changed?
Yeah, to a degree it has, because I followed you. I was actually very keen to see Trump come in, because I thought he was a step change in politics like Brexit was.
Yep.
But in terms of foreign policy, I followed the last call, which is this. I mean, I was in the armed forces, and I served in Afghanistan in Kabul on the strategic level, and I was there when Obama put through his promise to essentially withdraw troops by a deadline that was politically sense, and that was the most stupidest thing you could possibly imagine. Because
so you tell the enemy on what day you're going to withdraw. That's genius, isn't it, Michael?
Absolutely. Yeah. That's absolutely great, isn't it? Because what they did was they just withdrew themselves strategically for a while, knowing that they would then surge to force against what we called the Afghanicized forces, that we've given them capability, which we knew would not exist in time because it wasn't really consulted. Now, the second thing he did was draw a red line in Syria, then didn't back it up. Now, the thing I'll be impressed with Trump by, and I know you might feel this, that being a Trump supporter throughout this, you might have felt very nervous because it's been a rocky road. But in terms of how
Michael, I have to agree, as a Trump supporter, it has been a slightly rocky road, I grant you that.
I've been very impressed with his laser-like focus on North Korea throughout the whole situation. And Trump's been doing this thing where he's throwing left, he's throwing right, he's literally working and tumbling with China. And this is the thing, China had Obama pegged, it had America pegged. And, you know, Nixon had the idea of the madman theory, and I know a lot of people jump on that with Trump, but literally the madman theory being the fact that you don't know what they're going to do, therefore you have to actually change your game. And I know that a lot what Trump's doing is try to enforce the power play in the area and China to, in fact, change their the way that they move with North Korea, and force them. And he's essentially pushing and pushing and pushing, and he's not backing off. He's not saying we're going to back off. He's escalating, and now he's escalated to the highest degree.
Michael, is he? I mean, you're somebody that's served in uniform in the British Army. You've seen conflict. You've seen some horrible things too. Is Trump right in the sense that where he identifies North Korea as the biggest threat we face today?
Yeah, I do. I think so, because essentially what you're allowing, we've had proliferation before. Proliferation went so far, and you have you have state actors who are essentially rational actors, and you have what's called stable deterrence. With North Korea, how can you say, if you're the president of the United States, how can you talk to people of Guam, people of going down to Hawaii and saying, look, he says he's going to annihilate you in a nuclear war. They say he's going to hit San Francisco, but he's a bit funny. He's a bit weird. No, you can't do that. When someone says that as a president, in your president of the United States, your commander-in-chief, you have to give it some credence, and you have to essentially say, this is not the person that I'm going to allow this to happen. And everyone thinks that action is dangerous. Everyone thinks that you do something and South Korea will be hit. Let me say that if you don't do this and you do not hit here right now, then Iran will renege from its deal and push towards...
Well, and that was something else, of course. That was something else, Michael, of course, that Trump warned about today, too. He warned about Iran as well. Michael from Chichester, I thank you very much indeed. Your messages coming in. Nigel, no, because he continues military interventions and wrongly calls out Iran when the real threat is Saudi Arabia. But profit comes before people's lives to the US and the UK. That's what Dean says. Rosie says, I thought Trump's address to the UN today was magnificent. I hope Theresa May will draw inspiration from both his speech today and Boris's article at the weekend. Full of patriotic optimism. Let's hope it's infectious. Nigel, no, we already knew he was a nationalist lunatic. Well, there was no convincing photos on Facebook. I'm not a great fan of Trump, but on this occasion, I will go with him to crush Kim and the terrorists. He is the best. Thanks, says Ola. So I stand by my view. I said it on Fox News earlier on today. I think when people see the substance of this speech, I think British public opinion will turn and the president's ratings in the polls will go up. That's my view. Tell me I'm right. Tell me I'm wrong. Contact us here on LBC. I'm Nigel Farage. And it's 7:15. Donald Trump gives the most powerful speech any American leader has ever given to the United Nations. He criticises them. He criticises the cost. He criticises the bureaucracy. He says that Mad Kim from North Korea is Rocket Man, who's on a suicide mission. But they're the sort of things you'll read on the front pages tomorrow. But actually what he talks about is the world working together to crush Islamic terrorism. What he talks about is national sovereignty, states being vital, running themselves, having their own cultures. He talks about the dangers of mass immigration. He talks about many things that I think most Brexit voters in this country would believe in very, very strongly, and perhaps some from the other side too. And my contention is that after this speech, there'll be more people in this country that think Trump is a good thing and not a bad thing. This is what I said on Fox News this afternoon, immediately after his speech. This shows the gulf between the sort of PC political set that we have in Britain and Europe and ordinary people. And do you know what? As you say, we've had repeated terrorist attacks. One that happened here in London last week that mercifully wasn't as bad as it might have been. And I think ordinary people hearing a global leader standing up at the UN and saying, we will do all we can to confront terrorism and to threats to our culture and our way of life. I have a feeling that this president, who's had a very bad press here in the United Kingdom, I have a feeling his approval ratings in this country will have gone up significantly once they've heard this speech. That's my view, folks. I think Trump is going to start to win some of you over. So I'm here for you to come and have a go. I'm here for you to tell me I've got it completely and utterly wrong. You can call me on 0345 6060 973. You can text at 84850. You can tweet at LBC using the hashtag Farage and LBC. You can comment on Facebook or watch us on Facebook Live. And I promise you, there's no censorship, provided the language is clean. We will present all the opinions that come in here evenly. On Twitter, I get, maybe Trump's approval rating will go up, but he still referred to Kim as Rocket Man. Is he serious, says Ben. Ben, that is the way that Donald does things and talks about things. Trump has today laid the very keystone of a landslide victory for Bernie Sanders at the next election. Word of advice, Donald, never knock the competition, nor make pledges you can't fulfil, says Des in Stoke. Well, Bernie will, of course, be over 70 at the next election. I don't really think the Democrats are going to pick him, but you never ever know. Hi, Nigel. Good show. I'm a Trump supporter, a leader who actually tries to do what he says. North Korea is dangerous, but the overpaid bureaucratic UN will do nothing, says William from Swanscombe in Kent. And Trump has said that what is needed to be said for the last 10 years, says Laura. Rob says, I feel sorry for all the innocents. Let's just take out Kim. Gosh, Rob, you make Trump sound like a dove. Now, Jacob, which is a very popular Christian name on this show, but it's not Jacob Rees-Mogg, but it is Jacob from Lincoln. Jacob, has Trump struck a chord with you, or do you still think he's as awful as you've been told he is?
Nigel, he's clearly enthusiastic.
Well, he's certainly that, yes, I grant you that.
He's clearly enthusiastic, and he's single-minded, that's for sure as well. But, you know, does he, you know, I'm still questioning, does he actually truly believe what he's saying sometimes? That's the thing for me, you know, how much does he believe in it?
Yes, Jacob, do you know what? He really does. And let me tell you something, and I would never, ever betray a confidence or a private conversation with Trump, you know, either before or since he was president. But in general terms, I can tell you that from the first days of his presidency, he has genuinely been concerned that Kim Jong-un represents a threat to world peace. And he wants to form, Jacob, a coalition of countries. He wants to get everyone together to stop this guy developing nuclear weapons for fear he becomes another Hitler. Does he believe in it? You bet your life he does.
Okay, fair enough then. But how is he going to, if he wants to build this mutual respect and this coalition, how on earth can he be taken seriously when he uses some of the language that he does? You know, for me, Trump often comes across as almost boastful yet naive. And, you know, when he's wanting to talk on a serious nature about a serious topic, he brings out some interesting points sometimes, but then he completely undermines himself then on the other hand when he uses, you know, language like Rocket Man, when he uses language like loser terrorist. How can global leaders respect a man who clearly is in some cases just having a laugh, one big joke, having a good time?
Actually, Jacob, when he talks about loser terrorists, he talks about young men who've done badly at school, done badly with women, have got no money, have got drug habits, have got no future, and who turn to radical Islam. And he's right; they're losers. He's absolutely right about that.
But can he not choose better adjectives, adverbs, his syntax, all this sort of stuff? Why can't he?
Because Jacob, because Jacob, he's a New Yorker. And we all forget that. We all forget that.
New Yorkers, and then there are New Yorkers that are just having a big laugh. And he sort of, how can you put yourself on a global political stage and act as if you're having a laugh? You know, serious topics that need to be taken seriously with, whether it's world starvation, the climate, or whatever it is, terrorists. These things, if you're having a laugh about it, people on the face of it, the perception of people, they aren't going to take him seriously.
Jacob, where I do slightly agree with you is that whilst I think Rocket Man's a great phrase to use for Kim, and I've no doubt there'll be all sorts of variants of the Elton John song on sort of Twitter and YouTube later on today. The problem with using Rocket Man is that is what all the press agencies, all the newspapers are going to run with tomorrow, rather than the more serious stuff he said about the way the world should be and how sovereign states should defend their own borders, have their democracy, keep their cultures, but work together for the common good. And he talked about America's contribution to peace. He talked about the beaches of Normandy and all the things that America had done to defend these values and made it clear clear they would go on defending them, but within the right structures. So, Jacob, you've got a point. Sometimes Donald's language allows his opponents to perhaps take the public away from the serious comments that he's made. But overall, Jacob, I mean, are you more impressed by Trump after today or less impressed?
Do you know what? I stand just on the same sort of level. I haven't been, he doesn't cease to surprise me sometimes.
Oh, well, we're all like that.
But at the same level, my sort of feeling towards him is still that he needs to get serious about global leadership.
He gave global leadership today. He took on every major global issue today head on, didn't he?
But are people not thinking, oh no, it's not, it's just bloody Donald again, and we're just here he goes again, and then head in the hands, face palm sort of, is this just going to be the norm? Because when people act like this, sometimes you end up with people just nodding along and right, oh yeah, okay, and if he's not taken seriously, then people are, he's not going to be considered a global leader. People aren't going to join him in these coalitions.
I saw the faces of the representatives of the regimes of Venezuela and elsewhere in that room. They were taking him very seriously. Jacob, I thank you for your points. Jacob thinks that Donald's language and behaviour means that he simply can't be taken seriously. Frankie says, hi Nigel, I always liked Trump's straightforward talk. Today, he put the spineless, yellow-bellied leaders of Europe and the UK to shame. My father fought in the Korean War. President Trump was statesmanlike. If all politicians could be like that, plain and clear, using unambiguous language, the world would be a better place, says Margaret. Hi Nigel, I'm worried after what Trump said today, if North Korea do another test, they may immediately retaliate against them without looking at the facts. No, they will not do that. What he said pretty clearly, and this is backed up by General Mattis, and it's backed up by all the leaders of the US administration, Tillerson, all of them, is that if America is directly threatened, they will act. And whilst he wants to take out the North Korean regime, he's actually quite keen to liberate 36 million people in North Korea living under this awful, horrid, ghastly, oppressive system. I know it's strong talk. I know it's not the language that we're used to, but we perhaps do face the biggest threat in North Korea that the West has seen for a very, very long time. Michelle says, love the part where he stated, put the people of your country first. And he did, Michelle. He said, I will put America first, and you should put your countries first. But that doesn't mean we can't come together and work with each other. Goodness me. I didn't just agree with it. I was watching the television. I was cheering it. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It's 7:30. Donald Trump's big speech today to the United Nations. Big, strong, powerful stuff. Defence of national sovereignty. Belief that mass immigration is wrong. Nation states should keep their cultures, their borders, but work together for the common good. Now, of course, other comments that he made, such as calling the leader of North Korea, Kim Jong-un, Rocket Man, are probably what will make the headlines tomorrow. But wasn't just the big speech day for Donald Trump. Oh no, there was another very major speech going on today. A speech being made by a man who said it was quite realistic that he could become the Prime Minister after the next election. Let's go for a little visit, shall we, down to the delightful seaside of Bournemouth, what I was rumoured myself to have skinny dipped this time last year. And let's go to Vince Cable, who is speaking now. His great first leader speech at the Lib Dem conference. Gosh, he must be upset that McDonald has perhaps slightly overshadowed him, but here he is.
And politics has proved an even greater waiting game than life. I had to wait 30 years from my first campaign to win a seat in Parliament. And I've now had to wait 2 years to return after the setback in 2015. But now, friends, the time for waiting is over. Only the Liberal Democrats have the ideas, the experience, the commitment to transform the fortunes of our country. an exit from Brexit, a grown-up approach to the economy, and bold ideas to strengthen our society through the 21st century. I'm ready to take our message out to the country. And I ask you to join me on the journey as we together take the Liberal Democrats back to government. Thank you.
Well, I like Vince Cable. He's a very nice fella, very polite, the sort of guy in Westminster that crosses over the street to say, hello, Nigel, how you doing? Very pleasant, very decent, very nice. Politically, I disagree with him completely. He's become the leader of the Lib Dems because, frankly, nobody else wanted to do it. And he gave that speech today after a YouGov poll this morning had the Lib Dems now down to 5% in the opinion polls. And I don't think that the headline exit from Brexit is actually going to work. I'm sorry, Vince, mate. I know you love the European Union and think Juncker's a top banana, but the British public simply aren't going to buy it anymore. So, Vince's great big speech today, which should have been global headlines, but sadly, the Donald has trumped him in every single way. What do you think of Trump's speech today? You see, my contention is, I think that what Trump has said today about nation state, about borders, about mass immigration, about working together to recognise, confront and face terrorism and to see that North Korea poses a threat to the world, whether you agree with all of his language, whether you like the fact that he calls the North Korean leader Rocket Man, isn't actually relevant in my view. I think Trump's popularity will go up in the United Kingdom. Tell me I'm right, tell me I'm wrong. Kathy in Reading, am I right, am I wrong?
Well, I would say that you're wrong. Good evening, Mr. Farage.
Good evening.
I wanted to make a comment on the previous caller regarding the language rhetoric conversation that our Donald, and I will use the word our as a New Yorker, but also as a young girl who grew up in Queens, very familiar with the Trump family.
Okay.
I'm a few years older than Donald Jr., who has been able to live outside of the American bubble and watch the beginning of what I think is detrimental to our country, having someone who stands there in the world stage but cannot conduct himself or speak in a language that should be for a man who is meant to be a leader. Just the words that he uses, no, I'm sorry, are not acceptable. And as a New Yorker, and I was slightly offended that you said to the caller the fact that he's a New Yorker, these words are acceptable.
Kathy,
I'm an educated New Yorker, and I can tell you
Kathy,
not acceptable.
Kathy, I've spent, my first visit to New York was in 1988. In the 1990s, I was there once a month for many, many years. I've spent a lot of time in New York, and I've loved New York, apart from the traffic, obviously, but I've loved New York. And one of the things I've noticed about New Yorkers, far more than anywhere else I've been in America, is how frank and open they are with their opinions.
Absolutely, we are very blunt.
So that was what I meant. So that was what I meant. So when I said,
use the correct words.
When I said that Trump was a New Yorker, I meant that, my experience over nearly 30 years of New York is people say what they blooming well think and couldn't give a damn whether it offends people or not.
Absolutely, we do. But that has to change when you become a leader. This is a man who has businesses, who has dealt, with being in a leadership position. You do have to slightly change.
Kathy,
the retweets, the behaviours. This is not how a leader behaves.
Kathy, he's a 71-year-old, self-made, multi-billionaire. He's not going to change, is he?
Well, I think he then needs to surround himself with those around him that can help make a change. He has now stood on the world stage. How would you, and let me ask you this as an Englishman, Mr. Farage, would you feel that you had a great leader if Theresa May came from a council estate? And I'm not saying that Donald Trump did, and as I said, I grew up in the same area as Mr. Trump. We come from a middle-class background. But if Mrs. May conducted herself in the same way on the world stage... Do
you know what, Kathy? I couldn't care less. I couldn't care less where the British Prime Minister comes from. I couldn't care whether they're about to inherit a dukedom or they came from the most run-down council estate in any part of the United Kingdom you could mention. I couldn't care less what their accent is or how big their vocabulary is. I'm not even that bothered about their table manners. What I care, Kathy, is do they actually have a feeling for the country and for the ordinary folk of this country, and they're not in the hands of the big businesses and the big banks and big politics that have run the show for too long. That's all I care about.
Now that with the Donald and everything that has come out, us Queens, for those of us New Yorkers and those of us that come from Queens, have always known about the Donald. You know, there was always a bit something misogynistic. There was always a bit of racism about him. And now it's actually come out in the open. And it's quite interesting to see the whole world is actually seeing what most of us New Yorkers already knew.
Well, Kathy, you know, you call him a misogynist, you call him a racist, and indeed many parts of the American media call him worse than that. But he is the president, and I'm going to put it to you that there were many things that he said today in that speech that actually were very deeply thoughtful. They were concepts about community, about democracy, about identity, about working together that were very, very deep. I know that Rocket Man will be on the front pages, but Kathy, isn't it too easy just to characterise Donald Trump's speech as being that of a simpleton? Actually, it's a bit more complex than that.
I will agree with one thing. Definitely, I'm the North Korean, and again, as an American, we are quite patriotic. As you know, you've been around America for a very long time, and you know that we're probably one of the most patriotic people when it comes to our country. I absolutely stand behind him with what he wants to do with North Korea. Yes, absolutely annihilate. But again, the rest of the conversation that we have, there are different ways of putting that across and still coming across. Yes, we're playing the games. You know, I look at Mr. Kim Jong as a petulant child.
Okay.
You know, who's puffing his chest out.
Let me ask you, Kathy. I mean, look. I accept that Trump is in many ways, an alpha male, a big breast-beating alpha male. I understand that. That's what he's like. But let me ask you, Kathy, had Hillary become the 45th president of the USA, do you think she would have confronted North Korea or simply run away from it?
Nigel, I'll be totally honest. When we were looking to vote, the lesser of the two evils, who do you go for?
Well, to me, Trump by far was the lesser of the two evils, is the view that you will obviously have taken a different view.
Each had their own problems. They each had their own, as the Americans say, their own issues to bring on board.
Yes. But
would Hillary have confronted North Korea? No. Would Hillary have done a better job? No. We'd have been back to where we were many, many years ago. Hillary is a staunch politician.
So in the end, Kathy, we begin this telephone call on deep disagreement. Are we ending it on some agreement that Trump... Absolutely some agreement. As I said, there are certain items of Trump. I definitely agree with the North Korea. Yeah. But 80% of what our president says and does, it's quite... I cringe at times. I look at a tweet and I just think, my God, this is the man who is representing us on the world stage. I have, lots of English friends, and I sit here and I feel, the defending of having to defend, look, not all Americans are like him. We had the Bushes, and then we had, the Clintons, and we had the Obamas, and there is a difference. This is not a president. This is a man who is a businessman who's come in with different ideals. I just wish that he would surround himself maybe more with a little bit more politicians around him to help carry him through when he is having discussions or when he is standing on the world stage, that he doesn't embarrass us by saying things or retweet things that he shouldn't retweet. This is, for most Americans that did not vote for Trump, and for those of us that can sit back and look and think this is what we have. But Kathy, he's the Donald. He's not going to change.
He's also the Donald not on television, not being the apprentice. That is the difference.
Kathy from Reading.
That is the difference.
Kathy from Reading, born and bred in Queens, New Yorker, blunt as you like. It's been a great telephone call. Kathy, I think Kathy's wonderful. But she thinks Donald Trump, age 71, as a self-made billionaire, is somehow going to change. There's not a cat's chance in hell. He is what he is, but I think he's struck some very important notes at the United Nations today, and I think he'll become more popular in the UK as a result of it. Please tell me I'm right. Please tell me I'm wrong. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It's 7:45. gets the Donald. He goes to the United Nations and he tells them they're paid too much money by the taxpayer, they don't work enough, there's too much bureaucracy, they've got the wrong emphasis, and the world needs to rethink itself and get back to the concept of sovereign, democratic nation-states that run their own affairs, protect their own culture and their own borders, and recognise that Islamic terrorism and North Korea are the things that we must fight. Now, of course, he does it in his own colourful, the Donald language, because he calls the leader of North Korea Rocket Man, who is on a suicide mission. I laugh. Other people are horrified that the most important leader in the world talks in those terms. But it is my contention that as a result of what Trump has said today and the publicity that will come from it, the very negative perception the British public have had of Trump will improve. That's what I think. What does Michael in Biggleswade in Bedfordshire think? Michael, good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. Pleasure to speak to you. I suppose in regards to your question, will the British public be more kind of responsive to Trump? Will they like him more?
Yeah.
I think it's difficult. I mean, I was saying to your the person on the switchboard there that I think that people who support Trump tend to be in the Brexiteer camp.
Yes.
And obviously the vote for that was 52-48. And I think realistically, because people kind of these days on social media, they write down stuff in the public domain, it's difficult for people to actually write and come with an opinion and then change their opinion later. And I think, from my own personal view, that it might take something drastic, i.e. Kim Jong-un firing off one of these nuclear missiles and actually hitting something, for the kind of left, sort of more, the more sort of swaying to the left, to come forward and say, OK, maybe we do need a powerful leader to actually do something here.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the left hate Trump, and I think after today, when he literally, I've never heard anybody since Margaret Thatcher tear socialism to bits the way that he did on that stage today. I guess there are many
I thought it was great.
Well, this is what Trump does, of course. You love him or you hate him. But I guess that total denunciation of socialism, not just in practice but in theory as well, will in some ways make it harder for those on the left to come across to him. So you would see the Trump split being a bit like the Brexit split in this country, yeah?
A little bit, and I think that, the people who've kind of laid their bed are reluctant to change it. And what you kind of said about the, what he was talking about the mass immigration and nationalism kind of coming back, I think there's a kind of sensible nationalism coming back. I've just come back off the plane from Poland. You were talking about Vince Cable saying that, we need to exit from Brexit. And yes. I would question, is Cable stable? Because I think...
Well, I don't know, Michael. But hang on. So I've got callers questioning the sanity of Donald Trump, and now you're questioning Vince Cable. I mean, Vince is like a sort of nice elderly uncle who doesn't pose a threat to anybody.
I honestly feel the same, and I always have. When he was in the coalition, I kind of backed him. But I think he's on a kind of highway to nothing here. I mean, for me, you with Brexit, you've kind of started the domino effect. And, I just said I've come back from Poland. You've got the Prime Minister of Poland being demanded by Angela Merkel to take in all of these refugees. And she's flat out said, no way.
Oh, I know.
As has the Czech Republic and Hungary. And
Slovakia.
They're put in a position where they may well leave.
Yeah, don't forget Slovakia. And I will be in Prague on Thursday. I'm going there to give a speech to talk about Brexit and why the Czech Republic needs a free trade deal even more than we do. I'll be meeting the former President, Václav Klaus. And Michael, actually, when you listen to the leaders now of those 4 Central/Eastern European countries, they make me sound like a Europhile. Michael, I thank you. Opinions very strong. America is the biggest danger to world peace. Trump has turned out to be the same as all the other warmongers, says Tony. Ralph says, Nigel, one speech does not a president make. Not changed my mind about Donald Trump. He just gets even better, says Joy from Kidderminster. No, I've always thought he would be a great leader, not part of the political establishment, says Irina. And I can't believe it, but we have a second Jacob on the phone this evening, who's not Jacob Rees-Mogg, but it's Jacob from Barnet. Jacob, good evening.
Good evening. Good evening. What I essentially wanted to say was it's very difficult to kind of pick a side whether you like Trump or whether you don't like Trump, because he's obviously a very controversial character. But some of the things he does say, for example, in the conference today, do make a statement. And what I was thinking, when I was holding on before, if you're a person who's watching or hears about Donald Trump's comments, you think, okay, well, maybe this is a PR stunt because maybe from his campaign, the wall campaign, maybe it was all PR stunts, and you kind of don't trust, and you don't think he's credible.
Oh no, he means all of it, Jacob. He means all of it.
Yeah, of course, but even if he didn't, even if it was a PR stunt, because obviously the president doesn't have as much powers as he makes out to be. Obviously, with the Constitution, it's not that easy. But when you're a diplomat inside that conference, you can't exactly rule off what he says, because obviously it is possible to do.
Well, look, Jacob, he does things in his way. He says it in his own style. He says it because he believes it to be right. He couldn't actually give a damn whether people like it or not. He does it because he believes it to be right. And I kind of think, Jacob, that's the kind of honesty in politics that across the West we're beginning to respect rather more than we might have done 5 or 10 years ago. All right. Jacob from Barnet, thank you. Thank you, all the Jacobs, everybody that has phoned in today and texted and tweeted and Facebook messaged. I want to say one thing from a personal perspective, that today I did go to BBC Broadcasting House and I did hand deliver a letter to Lord Hall, the Director General of the BBC, where I raised the question of a Newsnight report, BBC Two, that took place last year, following the headlines of Polish man murdered in the streets of Harlow, and various news reports, and one in particular that appeared on BBC Newsnight when a friend of the deceased Pole said, I don't wish to name names, and the BBC journalist John Sweeney said, no, go on, name names. And he said, well, this is all the fault of Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage has blood on his hands, which led to a mass of left-wing commentators and pro-Remainers, some of them even on radio stations, saying that it was my fault. I'd stirred up this horrible cauldron that had led to people being murdered on our streets. An unprovoked attack, it was called, by Fiona Bruce. In fact, Evan Davis on Newsnight said the man was beaten to death in the streets. And the truth of it, that came out of the court last week, is there were two drunk Polish men who abused a black guy. There was a brawl in the street. There was a punch. The guy cracked his head and tragically died. So none of the things that have been said, none of the abuse that I and many around me had to suffer were true. And do you know what I've had from the BBC since then? Nothing. So I'm asking for an apology, and I've written a piece for the Daily Telegraph. It's up there online. It'll be in print tomorrow. And I've said, I think quite reasonably, to the Director General of the BBC, you, the BBC, actually were deliberately stirring up division and hatred in this country. And I demand an apology. And I think that's the least I could ask for. There are many that advise me I ought to go to a defamation lawyer, but I want an apology. I've sent a copy of that to Ofcom, not that that'll make much difference, I'm sure, but I want an apology. And if I don't get one, then I think I'll be compelled next year to feel, why should I pay the licence fee, given what these people have willfully done to me? No other news organisation approached that tragic death in the street and painted it out initially to be the fault of Brexit and Nigel Farage. And the whole thing is an absolute, complete and total disgrace. And I think the BBC need to start proving to people that actually they will be an impartial, sensible broadcaster. You've been listening to the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC. I'm back tomorrow evening from 7. Coming up at 10, it's Ian Collins, but up next, it's Clive Bull.
Nigel, thank you. Lots to come between now and 10. More on Donald Trump.